Bloody hell. So of course, the Oddworld Soulstorm trailer that was released by Oddworld Inhabitants yesterday had like a 4-second clip of Molluck The Glukkon. I've just made a 12-minute video analysing that 4-second clip. Just about thingy. What did I find out? Bloody PlayStation have uploaded an exclusive clip of Molluck The Glukkon. But yeah, so I just want to have a quick explainer just beforehand, just to say I hadn't seen the PlayStation exclusive clip of Molluck The Glukkon. I'll put a link to it in the description. But yeah, so now here's the video that I created out of the 4-second clip in your Oddworld Inhabitants trailer. Molluck The Glukkon has been seen in the latest Oddworld Soulstorm trailer for the PlayStation 5 released yesterday by Oddworld Inhabitants. This is actually really notable because not only is it the first appearance of a Glukkon actually in-game, it's the first appearance of Molluck The Glukkon, the main antagonist of the first game Oddworld Abe's Oddysee, and its subsequent remake, which is technically the canon first game now, Oddworld New and Tasty. I previously mentioned Molluck's appearance in this trailer and how it has that overly CGI feel to it, at least in my opinion. I compared it to how the original Molluck, looked realistic, and how, to me, it's disappointing that Oddworld seems to have lost that realistic element to it that it somehow had so brilliantly over 2 decades ago. I mean, to be fair, I often remove Oddworld New and Tasty out of my headcanon, but actually the Molluck from New and Tasty is the one that this Molluck is continuing on from, so it makes more sense for him, I guess, to look CGI as the Molluck from New and Tasty did. That doesn't mean I personally like the style of it, but whatever. To be fair to them, there's certain angles and shots where it looks alright and kinda looks realistic and everything, but then he'll pull a face like he does at the end that completely ruins it and makes it seem like a cartoony caricature instead of the evil, calm villain he was in Abe's Oddysee. It makes him seem a lot less threatening and more comical, and I find that disappointing personally. But I don't know, maybe I'm just nitpicking. Also, the fact he has terrible teeth doesn't exactly help, but whatever. I think this trend started with New and Tasty though, in terms of I've seen clips of Molluck from that pulling these well, not pulling faces, but he just seemed more expressive than he did in Abe's Oddysee, and more cartoony. And that's disappointing because in my opinion what made Molluck so unique among the Glukkons and seemed so threatening was the way he was cool, calm and collected but firm. And just, if he had a problem he dealt with it calmly and pragmatically. Now the other way can work as well, of course, I'm not saying expressive campy villains can't be threatening or doesn't work or whatever. Just look at Humphrey and Irwin of Munch's Oddysee, for example. And if Molluck had always been like that, then I probably wouldn't have a problem with it. But because he wasn't originally written like that, it just makes him seem out of character, I guess. I joked in my previous video that I think he says more words in this trailer than he did in the entirety of Oddworld Abe's Oddysee. But do you know what? I think that might be true. I just had a quick look and I might have missed some stuff, but I think the only things he says in Abe's Oddysee are "things are going down, watch, show 'em" in the introduction. By the way, I've never before heard him say "things are going down" until I just had a look now, and I thought it was a Glukkon in the background, but no, I checked and it was him saying it by the looks of it.
Things are going down.
Then I think he doesn't speak until the end, when depending on the ending, I think he says "kill him, do it," and just that sort of mumbles some stuff that I couldn't even work out what he was saying. I mean, to be fair, I didn't try that hard, but still. My point is the fact that it's debatable whether he said more in Abe's Oddysee or in this literally 4-second clip from a trailer in which he says, "We are not letting that Abe guy get away from us again," suggests a dramatic character change from how he was originally presented, which is interesting. Who knows, it may not even be a bad thing. Don't think I'm saying this as a criticism or saying it is a bad thing or anything. It's just personally I liked how Molluck was as a calm, collected, quiet type that didn't need to say much. But who knows, maybe it'll work well by giving him more of a voice and actual dialogue. While thinking about this, a rather interesting thought occurred to me. Isn't it fascinating how in Abe's Oddysee, a game that made a big deal about how your ability to talk and how verbal communication was your weaponry, the main bad guy was essentially silent, apart from mumbling a few words in the background? Just a thought to consider anyway. I will say, just to go back to his face briefly, I do think it's an improvement from New and Tasty. I'd say it looks a lot more realistic than New and Tasty portrayed him, but as we've seen with Toby, the characters in this game do seem to have very stretchable faces and it concerns me slightly. The promo images of the Glukkons from Oddworld Soulstorm sort of showed them, in my opinion, to be very realistic. and the Glukkons were one of the few redesigns that I didn't mind because of that. You know, they had more realistic eyes and all that sort of thing. But then this trailer sort of shows Molluck and it's a bit like, yeah, okay, I'm not getting the same ultra realistic feeling that I got from the promo images. This feels very cartoony, much like everything else of Soulstorm that's been seen so far, at least in my opinion. We also get a better look at Molluck's clothes thanks to this trailer. I find it interesting that his attire is so monotone and black and white and dull, which of course we've known for years thanks to the promo image. But still, I've always taken it as a sign of a Molluck who's down on his luck. A defeated Molluck that doesn't feel like shown off with vibrant purple suits, gold decorations, and a bright red cravat or tunic or whatever that thing he wears under his suit is called. I also took all this black attire as being reminiscent of someone in mourning, like as though he's mourning the loss of his status, power and business, and also potentially mourning his own life if he goes on trial and is found guilty and killed by Queen Margaret. I feel like he's trying to appear humble by wearing such muted colours and a dull, sad suit that also seems a lot less imposing than what he used to wear. Hell, even in his trailer his shoulders go down. I don't think that's ever been seen before. A proud Glukkon wearing a suit that doesn't constantly prop up his shoulders into proud points is amazing, especially considering it's Molluck. So this new suit seems to make him a lot less imposing than he once was, at least in my opinion, which would make sense considering what he's lost. Also a pretty irrelevant point, but I just thought I'd mention it anyway, but I noticed that his suit is buttoned up on the opposite side to what he used to wear, which is interesting. He still has gold decorations such as this button connector thing or whatever it's called, but actually it looks more like bronze to me. The only reason I referred to it as gold just then is because in the promo shots his medal was clearly gold, but in this clip it's the same bronzy colour as the suit connector thing. So I think they might have reverted it to this bronze instead actually, as gold might be too flash for a Glukkon who's failed like Molluck has. Although it could literally just be the lighting of the shot. It's also interesting to note that he doesn't have his signature cigar in this clip, nor does Molluck have it in the promo image. Maybe that's why he hardly spoke before, he was too busy munching on the cigar, so he literally couldn't do anything else but mumble the occasional word. Take the cigar out of his mouth and he's as talkative as anything apparently. Again, I think this might be a status symbol, or actually a symbol of his lack of status rather. While the design of the suit appears in my opinion less imposing and the dull colour scheme could indicate that he's down on his gluck, if you'll pardon the pun, it's also worth pointing out that the colour scheme makes him look more evil arguably. You know, wearing all black, it's a typical villain thing, like it makes him look more sinister and evil, at least in dress sense, especially when paired with the scar he's got now. He's like Blofeld. Black is just, you know, the colour of evil, he represents the dark side and his dress sense now reflects that more, even if it is less flash. In some ways it's a dress sense that's more serious, and as a result still very threatening, like he means business now. When a Glukkon doesn't care as much about how they dress and standing out and all that, you know they're annoyed, and Molluck shows this by simply wearing all black. Either that or he's just an emo now. Now I want to turn attention to something that's arguably more interesting, at least in my opinion, and that's this Slig here. For some reason my initial reaction was that Molluck and Slig were on a Fico or Comet's depot train, but actually it seems pretty obvious just by the way the Slig is piloting this thing that actually it's one of the air blimps that's been seen. And plus for more confirmation, the Slig's hat clearly resembles a pilot's hat with a winged logo and whatever, but the logo itself even resembles one of the Zeppelins. I've always liked Zeppelins, I think they're good. I'm glad they're playing more of a role in Oddworld Soulstorm. So this Slig, whom I'll refer to as the pilot, though I'll probably never mention that name again, appears to be piloting an airship. They should have got a flying Slig with a pilot masked flight, I guess, with Molluck as his passenger, and judging by the line, "We are not letting that Abe guy get away from us again." Presumably they're chasing Abe, and potentially close behind him, judging by Molluck's frustration. I wouldn't be surprised if Molluck spends a lot of the game in this airship chasing Abe actually, as he's a story villain and not a gameplay villain. It'd be a way to have him constantly present and a threat in the midst of the action, while not actually being in danger himself. I also think this, judging by the fact that the thumbnail, which is a shot that doesn't actually appear in the trailer itself, shows Molluck instead looking quite happy, in contrast to how he is in the trailer. I like to think that this Slig is Molluck's personal assistant, like his valet or something, but potentially he's just a pilot. But the thumbnail reveals something about the Slig that I find to be potentially the most interesting thing about this whole thing. Look at the Slig, look at his tentacles or tendrils or whatever they're called. Is it me or has he got like stubs? The ends of his tentacles are missing. missing. That has never been seen on a slig before as far as I'm aware. Now initially from a distance, I thought that this thing here was a cigar, and for some reason I thought Molluck may have made the slig out Molluck's cigars using his tentacles, and over time the ends of his tendrils had burnt off. But then I clearly realised that it was very blatantly just the steering wheel of the airship, or controls, or whatever it's called. But still, it did make me consider, what if the fact that this slig is missing the ends of his tentacles indicates that he's a lesser status slig, and like that he's the best Molluck could get now or something. Plus, I know sligs are pretty thin, but this one looks really, really thin to me. You could do with a paramite pie, but you know, maybe I'm just looking too much into his ribs here, and that's how all sligs look, and me actually. Of course, Lorne Lanning has previously stated how he wanted to make Mudokons and Glukkons to all look different from each other as opposed to looking the same. So perhaps he wanted the same for sligs as well, and the tentacles and all that is his way of differentiating the different sligs and making them all look different. Not sure. Be interesting to find out though, if this literally is just an aesthetic change or if it actually plays a part in the story. I personally hope it's the latter. I think it'd be more interesting. Either way, the way Molluck and the slig look at each other suggests to me that they have quite a good relationship, which is unusual for a slig and his Glukkon master, I think. A slig could potentially actually be competent at his job, as Molluck appears very happy with him apparently. I wish I had a slig that looked at me the way he looks at Molluck. So the story of Molluck the Glukkon in Oddworld Soulstorm, from what we can gather thanks to this clip, suggests to me that he'll be chasing after Abe for some reason. On the surface, potentially to get revenge for what he did in New and Tasty. However, Lorne has said that Molluck, having survived the destruction of Rupture Farms, faces criticism from the other Glukkons who just think he burnt down the place to claim the insurance money. As a result, it occurs to me that potentially the game starts off with Molluck on trial for this, for having lost Rupture Farms, and has to prove that his story about a Mudokon uprising and Abe destroying the factory, which is unbelievable, not himself. Literally, if he's facing death because the Mudgog cartel think he burnt down the factory on purpose for the money, then his only way out will be to prove that what he said is a reality, despite how hard the cartel finds to believe it, that Abe and the Mudokons destroyed it instead. Maybe Queen Margaret gives Molluck, her favourite son, the benefit of the doubt and allows him to try to prove his innocence, and as a result he spends the game in this airship, a fast way to travel long distances, trying to find Abe and bring him to justice, in the process clearing his own name and restoring his status, as well as not getting killed by his own mother. It's an interesting idea anyway. Considering the name of the airship line is Rupture, presumably it has close ties to Molluck, and a thought occurs to me that he may have literally set up an airline firm in order to scour the entire continent of Mudos, hunting down Abe so desperately because he literally needs him to find him to prove his story. And it's ironic because Molluck's actually right, he's telling the truth. As a result, it occurs to me to wonder as to whether Molluck is looking to get revenge on Abe and is hunting him down in hatred, or if he's purely just pragmatically trying to find him because he needs to prove he's innocent of what the Magog cartel has accused him of. It will be interesting to see more of the struggle of Molluck the Glukkon in Oddworld Soulstorm.
Hello, follow me.